welcome back, everybody, to another episode of East County Voices. Miss Patty, what do we got going on tonight?
Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Tonight we have a special guest. We have a very special guest, Miss Monica Wilson. We have a very important topic to speak on that we haven't really spoken about before, and that's the topic of aging, of dementia, of our elderly population. Miss Nicole has a big, well, we all have big fights, but the elderly don't have a big voice. And so Nicole is going to share with us some updates about what's happening in our community. But most importantly, just speaking about our loved ones, and Miss Monica will share her story. But we could do a round robin real quick about how is everyone doing? Yay! Is my fridge loud? It cools like often, and it just turned on. Can you hear it?
No.
Okay. Let's talk elderly. Okay, experiences with our elderly. Look, my parents are getting old, and I told them that they're going in a senior home. I won't be able to deal with, but I don't know. They've also said they want to go into a senior home, and they would just want to age there. And that's the life cycle. We were born, we live, and then we pass on to the other side, and that is life. And but it's difficult because what is that process like? I've never known anyone with dementia. I know my grandfather, before he passed, he had he had it, not too severe. I volunteered at the senior center in downtown Antioch many years ago when I was like in leadership in I don't know, 2003 or something. It was a long time ago. But being in that elderly population, we're gonna get there. Carlos, you're probably the closest in all of. No, I'm just
Right?
Carlos is young forever. No. But it's the reality. Like, what is it like? Carlos, Ms. Nicole, what's your experience with the elderly? And
well, I lost my uncle to dementia. He's one of the very many people that I knew that had it. I've unfortunately known a lot of people with Alzheimer's and dementia, and it's really sad because that was my favorite uncle. And it really did get to the point where he literally kind of forgot everything. So I wasn't able to keep up. Like, we would call and talk to each other all the time. And I remember one time I called him and I left him a message, and he was so confused. He was like, I don't know who this is. And I'm trying to, understand. And like, he literally didn't know who I was, and it just broke my heart. But yeah, it's really tough to watch someone you love just lose all the memories and everything, of everything.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, and sorry for your family and that's been affected, like that you've seen it a lot. And Gavin, welcome, Gavin. Welcome, Mary. Topic tonight: dementia, our elderly. We have a special guest, Monica, and another guest, Mary. I know you took care of your parents recently. We're just talking about just going around, and I was eating too. We're just talking about like our own experiences before Monica shares out like her journey with her mom. So anyone else have any experience with elderly dementia that you want to share before we?
Well, my elderly didn't have dementia.
No. Okay.
No, my elderly had other things. I dealt with COPD, diabetes, high blood pressure, and the most challenging for me was osteoporosis. And
Okay.
I'm actually creeping up on the 1-year anniversary of my mother passing away this Friday.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mary, for taking the time and sharing with us. Hopefully out of this, like, we'll just be there for other people going through this part of the life cycle and inspire them and give them love. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We have another guest. Hi, Frank, our other host. Frank, we're talking
Full
dementia,
house.
elderly, and Miss Monica is going to share out. Before we get started, does anybody else want to share anything about their experience with their elderly seniors? Don Carlos,
Yeah,
what you got?
I know you asked before the show, but yeah, I can talk about it. I mean, I lost my mom to dementia and my dad to Alzheimer's. So with my dad, when I went to the funeral, I mean, it wasn't as impactful because he wasn't really in my life, But when my mom got dementia, though, I mean, that's all I knew was her, and there would be times where, I always thought, if I just told her stories, especially stories that were close to her heart, she would hopefully remember them, and and she didn't, and I think the hard part for me when I hear a lot of people, because people convey to me, that their parents died and all that, and of this and that. I mean, it sucks when, I know we all have to go, but for a lot of them, it's just lucky that their parents still remembered who they were even into their deathbed. And for me, it hurt because my mom didn't really know who we were. So like and then she just, she just, it was just it hurt. So
And my mom didn't know me at the end either.
yeah, see, so
She kept asking where her daughter was.
right.
So,
Frank.
but she remembered my sister.
Aww.
And I'll just say, hey, Monica, before Monica gets started, many of you know I just helped care for my grandma in hospice for like about 4 months, where I was basically living the night shift at my grandma's. So I'll be listening as someone that just did that. Basically, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I was staying with my grandmother basically through her final days until one night she passed away while I was there. And I woke up in the morning and she was gone. So that was a very recent experience I'll be listening from. And I'm also dealing with a family member now that is suffering from either dementia or Alzheimer's. We don't know. So right now we just had a family meeting and we're getting ready to do the next steps, which is to get an official diagnosis so we could have what the insurance provides, because we're struggling, the family's struggling to help care for this person on their own. And so we're trying to bring in the rest of the family. And it's like, anyways, I don't want to get in too involved, but that's where I'll be listening from. That I'm in the beginning stages of trying to diagnose what could we do to help and fill in as family members, so the one person is not alone living their life with somebody that's suffering, while we're just out here going to dinner by ourselves and out in other worlds while they're struggling. So anyway, I'll leave it there, but that's where I'm at listening tonight.
Yeah. Thank you, Carlos, for sharing your story, and Frank and Mary and Nicole, because this is a very serious topic and we're putting ourselves, this is a vulnerable space, and I appreciate you all for always using your voices and being willing to share your own lived experiences and thoughts. So with that, Gavin, I see your hand. Do you want to? Oh,
He's napping.
okay.
A little bit. So this is just my experience. So when I had like I was blessed to have like three like 3 or 4 of my great grandparents and a set of my grandparents, and I was so blessed to have them all in my life. And each one is a little different situation. But one of those situations that I would like to share from my experience was when it was kind of time for them to like depart from this world. Um, it was really hard for me, especially being out of different sets. I'll say it that way. Out of different sets, I'm kind of like the oldest, but at the same time, I'm kind of the middle. If that makes sense. So
Mhm.
for me, it's a little different because I've been through a lot, and it's just like I always had one of them at least to hold my hand through a certain situation. And when I accepted the California Hawaii Unit Year Activist Award, it was um close to my grandmother's birthday that passed. Her name was Dorothy.
Mhm.
Also, fun fact, she was a Black Panther.
So
Her and my
fun.
grandmother were Black Panthers. Um, accepted the award. I just couldn't. I was speechless because I was just the whole day. I just kept thinking about her. And usually, when it comes to like my grandparents, or my great grandparents' birthday, I just keep myself busy. Or if it's like the anniversary of the death, I keep myself like very busy so I could distract my mind, because if I don't, I'm like I just break down and start crying each time. And because I was very close to my grandparents, because they were also the people that raised me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. With that,
You know,
mhm. Go ahead,
so
Mary.
I think another thing that people need to acknowledge when they're that there is a syndrome. It's called caregivers syndrome, and it's for people that are primary caregivers, and how it takes a toll not only on them mentally because they're processing things differently than other people will, but it can also have long-term physical effects. And most countries acknowledge it, and the United States does not. So it's important that if you are caring for somebody elderly and you're a primary, or even not elderly, you're caring for a loved one that's in a situation, it's important to take time for yourself, accept respite, and also get yourself somebody who is a grief counselor so that they can help you work through the grief before it happens. So I took care of my parents on and off since 2019. My mother was living in my house when she passed away. And my dad had chose to go home and pass away in Fresno, and I missed his death by 15 minutes. But not only was I a primary caregiver to them physically, but I was also on the phone all day long with caregivers and churches and every other aspect of their life in order to make sure that they were taken care of when they weren't with me. So as a caregiver, please get yourself help, because it's not something you should ever have to do alone, because it's scary.
Mhm. That's real. That's real. Thank you, Mary. Um, yeah, this is what we're here to talk about, the reality. So Miss Monica, share with us a bit of your experience and what we could learn from.
Definitely. Yeah. So what Mary was saying, caretakers fatigue is a real thing. um, and it definitely should be acknowledged in the United States. And we definitely, people, we need to check on, ourselves. But we also need to check on our friends who are taking care of a loved one or in a role where they're kind of a caretaker. So just want to acknowledge that. So thank you for bringing that up, Mary. And thank you for having me on, to talk about my experience with my mom having dementia. I lost my dad in 2010 from pancreatic cancer, and remembering having, it happened so quickly. He was diagnosed in January, and by March he had passed. And remember, helping my mom take care of my dad and going through that, and so here we are, fast forward, and I can kind of give you some background. Probably late 2020 and throughout 2021, I kind of noticed some behavior changes with my mom, like just odd things she would do that were kind of not normal. And she'd always kind of talk about, I think I'm losing my mind. She'd always kind of say jokingly, I think I'm losing my mind. And okay, at the beginning, I'm like, okay, mom, this, we all forget things from time to time. But then I started observing behavior that wasn't consistent with what, how she was. Like when we were growing up, my mom was always like, I wouldn't say penny pincher, but she was very like, she watched her money and watched dollars and how it was spent. Like when we were little, if we wanted like money to go to the movies, we just go ask my dad. Dad, can you use it? And he would be like, okay, here's some money to go to the movie. And my mom was not like that. She was very. I remember one year. For those of you who don't know, I grew up in Marin County. And one year, my friends and I wanted to go to the fair. And in Marin County, the first day of the fair, long, or the county fair, the first day, if you're under the age of 12, you get in for free. And so I remember going to my mom, going, "Can I have some money for the fair?" And she was, "Well, how much money do you think you need?" I'm like, at the time, like, "Oh, $20." She's like, "Well, let me figure this out for you. You don't have to pay admission to get in. So, okay, you don't need that. Maybe you might need a soda or two and a hot dog." And she was, "Okay, in my head, that's like $8." And she would give like $8. Like she would figure out in her head. So she was very, that was kind of part of her behavior. And then I noticed, fast forward, she was kind of, I wouldn't say spending frivolously, but making kind of odd purchases. Like, I'd go over and I'd go and visit her. She was living in Santa Fe where I grew up, and I'd be here and I'd go and visit her. And I'm like, "Why do you have like 50 pairs of glasses? Why do you, oh, I always forget I buy." Like it was stuff like little things like that at the time I wasn't I'm like, okay, that's odd, but I'm not going to kind of pay attention to it. And then at one point she had, senior fraud is also a form of elderly abuse, where somebody was trying to fraudulently get money from her. Somebody, as my mom's not great with tech, and somebody had called and said, "Oh, somebody, is stealing your identity. If you pay me X amount of dollars, I'll fix it." And I just remember one day, it was like sometime in like late October, it was in September of 2021, and getting a call from her bank. And the bank saying, your mom's in here asking for $20,000 in cash. And so, I was like, "Oh no, don't give that to her." Lower her withdrawal limits. I said $100. And like immediately I just dropped everything and I drove out to Marin to see what was going on. And we kind of pieced together, with my brother, with other things that happened, we kind of pieced together that somebody was trying to kind of get over on her. And thankfully we had caught it in time. So it was little things like that I'm like, okay, this is just out of character for mom. And we had already kind of started the process of, she shouldn't be out here by herself. Let's move her out. My brother lives in Brentwood. I'm here in Antioch. And we started talking about, let's move her out here, because she needs to live with us. I think at one point when we first started, we were just going to try to find her a house out here. And then it turned to, probably she should just stay with one of us. She shouldn't be out there by herself. But she was kind of stubborn then. She's like, "No, I want to live by myself. I don't need any help." And we're like, "Mom, yeah, I think it's time for you to come out here." And so that was the end of November. And then I'll never forget the day. It was December 21st. And actually, December 20th, I was supposed to go out and pick her up and bring her to my house. And she had called and said, "Hey, can you pick me up the next day?" And I'm like, "Okay, I'll pick you up the next day." And so it was the 21st. I was working out in Hayward at the time. My brother was still, he was still working. He was working in Martinez. And I go to call my mom to say, "Hey, I'm going to be at the house around 1 o'clock to pick you up. Have your stuff ready, and we're going to come out here, and you're going to spend the rest of December and Christmas with us." I think and at the time we were planning this like trip for New Year's. We were going to go to Hawaii for New Year's, so we're like, we just bring everything, and she'll just stay the month of December through the trip. And so I go to call her, and when she picks up, it was the way she was taught, like her cadence was off, and she was just kind of saying random things. I'm like, "Mom, this is Monica. I'm going to come out and pick you up." And I remember her saying shoe, pencil, pizza, like she was just saying random words. And I'm like, Mom, are you okay? And she would say pizza, water, just all these random words. I'm like, "I'm going to call 911." And she kept saying, "No, don't call 911. I'm like, "I got to call 911 and get somebody over to the house because something's going on." So, contacted my brother. We contacted Marin County Sheriff's Department because my mom lives, we live in unincorporated Marin County, and said we need a welfare check. Explained that I was in Hayward, my brother was coming to Martinez, and we needed somebody there quickly. We called my older sister. I have an older sister that lives in New York. She called and got on the phone with my mom and just said, "Mom, don't say anything. I'm on the phone with you. Somebody's coming. Monica and Terrence are coming." And so she stayed on the phone until my sister stayed on the phone with my mom until the fire department and paramedics came. It was interesting because after, my mom has a Ring camera. And so we were able to, like, after the fact, kind of witness the fire department coming, and they're taking my mom. And my mom was walking, and the fire department came, like, "Miss Wilson, Mrs. Wilson, we understand there's something going on with you." And she kept going, "No, I'm fine. Pizza, pencil, water." And they're like, "No, we don't think so, but let's take a check." And so they took her to Kaiser Permanente and Terra Linda, and she was in the middle of having a stroke. And got her there in time.
Wow.
They managed to contact my older sister, knew what was going on because she was on the phone when the paramedics came, and they talked to her. So she informed my brother and I, "Hey, don't go to the house, go to the hospital." We drove there. She was awake when I got there, but very disoriented. Speech was off. They said at that point in time they thought she just had aphasia. They said she had the stroke, and they believed that she had aphasia. And sitting in the hospital scared because this is my only parent. My father had passed away, and I was kind of having flashbacks to when he was in the emergency room and going through his bout with cancer, and talking to the doctor, and trying to give as much information as possible. And there are things a lot of stuff I knew, and there are things I didn't know. Same thing with my brother. And you're thinking, are they looking at me like, "You don't know this about your mom?" And just trying to be there for her and trying to figure out what's going on and talking to the doctors. And so when the doctors explained what was going on, we got to keep her in the hospital for a few days. As we run more tests, we want to keep her on observation. They explained that she had a blood clot that went to her brain, which caused the stroke. And just being really scared and really nervous and trying to figure out how can I be there for my mom. And knowing this is going to be a different life, was just going to be a whole lot different. So, they actually released her from the hospital on Christmas Eve. They're like, "Oh, Miss Wilson, we're going to release you. You're in the care of your family." Her doctors had informed us, like, "We have to contact DMV. She can't, they have to revoke her driver's license." These are things and talk about next steps, like what we needed to do. And so I immediately, just picked her up and drove her straight to my house here in Antioch, and it just kind of started that whole journey of what to do and really working with my siblings, the doctor sat us down. They're like, have you guys looked into maybe a care facility? And at the time, my brother and I like, no, she's gonna live with one of us. We're gonna take care of her. We're family. We want to do what's best. And of course, the doctor's like, I hear what you're saying, but we think it's in her best interest to, for you guys to put her in a care facility. We get that you love your mom. It's just a lot. And so for about a month, for about 2 or 3 months, she stayed with me. We made it work. The only thing that would happen was, it was a city council week. My brother would come over, pick her up, and he would stay with him for a few days. Then she'd come back with me. And what was happening was every couple of days we were moving her, and the doctor had said, that's not a good life for her to be moved every 2.5, 3.5 days. And so we made the decision to move her out here over at the Commons. So now I just said to the public where my mom lives, but moved her into the Commons on their assisted care side. And that's, when you're looking into assisted care or care facilities for your parent, nobody talks about, how expensive it is. It's are outrageous. And, and it's a care facility, and they're there to, there's staff there to, make sure that her needs are met and whatever she needs help with, and, make sure she's fed. And I get that part, but a lot of people probably don't realize when you have a parent that you're caring for and you have to move them into a care facility. I think a lot of people are kind of like shocked to hear how much the cost is, because it can run upwards of, $9,000, $10,000, $11,000 a month. Depending on what care, she started off on the assisted side, which was a little bit less. And she was had a little bit more of an independence, where she had like a little 1-bedroom apartment with a little kitchenette. But at one point, they figured out pretty quickly she needed to be on the memory care side of the facility. One time she did manage to get out. She got out. Nobody knew that she had left, and it just happened. She made it to that Rite Aid that's on the corner of Dallas Ranch and Lone Tree Way, and bought her some supplies. And she was leaving, got confused, and it just happened. One of the shuttle bus drivers for the Commons happened to be in there picking something up and recognized her.
God.
And bought her back. And so, my brother was over there immediately, like, Mom, what's going on? She goes, oh, I needed these things. I wanted to go out and buy it. And him having to say, Mom, if you need something, Monica and I will go get it. So it's
so independent. The independentness in her.
Independence in her. And she tried a couple more times, because I'd get the call like, your mom tried to leave, and so but and I'm talking about that experience. There's so many other things. My mom was a completely different person than who I grew up with, and the woman that I knew that was this big support system in my life. A woman that knocked on doors for me when the first time I ran for office here. That strong person. She was a teacher. She was an educator and a principal, and taught a lot of students. And here she is now, struggling with speech. I mean, her speech has improved so much, but she still struggles. And sometimes she'll talk and she'll just stop and say, that doesn't make sense. Or and so sometimes having to having her slow down when she's talking, or if she's forgotten something, sometimes just taking a deep breath, or just saying, it will come back to her. And you just, it's a different person. Thankfully she still remembers me and my siblings. She has a harder time remembering her surviving siblings. My mom, she's from South Carolina. Was there most of her life until she left for school, in DC. And then, she met my dad. They had 2 girls, and then moved to California and had a son, had the 3rd child. And so, it was a lot of independence, being so far away from her family, and you know,
Mhm.
every other summer we had to spend a week or 2 weeks in Greer, South Carolina. So if you're ever in Greer, I know my way around. But, and now, this is a slightly different woman, and really, and you guys can stop me if I'm talking and talking. You're really kind of making sure I'm there for her and understanding what she's going through. I know, a friend of mine says, when you talk to your mom, you kind of have to be in her world. And I got lots of really good advice. I remember I was talking to I was talking to Councilmember Orkachuk one day, and I was telling her, I think it had been within a year of my mom having the stroke and then being diagnosed. And I had said something to her about, I was asking my mom something, and I kept saying, "Mom, don't you remember?" And she had said, Councilmember Orchuk had said to me, "No, she doesn't remember. That's what dementia is. She can't retrieve that memory that saying to do that." And I remember just that that struck me as like, okay, I have to really understand, how her mind is working and how she is in this world, and and being there for her, and from time to time she has these brief, I call them moments of clarity. If anybody who has had a loved one that has dementia or Alzheimer's, dementia is basically a form of Alzheimer's. They have these moments of clarity. It's almost like they click back to who they were. And I remember I was over at the Commons visiting her and kind of going through her closet and folding some clothes and having a conversation. And at one point she's like, "Monica," and I was like, "Yeah, Mom." And she goes, "You can probably be doing 1,000 other things than being here with me." And I'm like,
Oh.
and like just as quickly she was like clear, she fell right back into, and she kind of looked at me for a minute. I was like, "Oh, I was like, Mom, you were telling me about this. What else do you want to say?" And she goes, "Really? I said that?" And I'm like, "Oh, she forgot that quickly that she had that." Right. So it's hard, but thankfully I have a loving family and siblings that help out. I really kind of take care of like medical things for my mom, and if she wants to, as a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm going to take her get her hair done. So I take care of that. My brother really kind of focused on the house in Marin when we had to, finally sell that house, and making sure most of her accounts are in order. And then, my older sister, and this is one thing I'm really thankful to both my parents, that they were forward thinking enough to create a trust. So things like this happened, that it gave us the ability to help them and make sure that they were comfortable. So my sister, since she's the oldest, oversees that. And we basically, it's money for her to be comfortable and not have to really, worry
See,
about.
those are the things that we missed with my parents, is that my dad was very in control.
Mm-hmm.
And he refused to let anybody help him. So he would get fired from nursing care. And we finally found somebody who put up with him, but he hated her. He's always calling me saying, "Mary, I need you to interview more people." And I'm like, there's nobody in Fresno left. It was a lot, but he didn't want to pay for anything. So when my mom got really bad, because what had happened is my mom went through confusion. In the last 6 to 8 months of her life, she was very confused. But she thought she had been kidnapped and taken to a casino and was then moved to Mexico, and she couldn't find the purse that some lady gave her. And, I said, "You need to call 911 and get her taken to the hospital." And then I went and I worked with the social workers at the hospital and had her transported to my house. And she's like your mom, where she would have moments of clarity, but then there would be moments where she's just like, "Why didn't you invite me to the wedding?" And I'm like, "What?" or, put some messages in the trees and see if anybody responds. And I'm like, oh, So, but it was hard. But for me, it was the scariest part was that she had osteoporosis. So if she fell, she would break.
Mm.
And we had to have a few surgeries where they put plastic in her spine to seal the cracks.
Mm.
And I had to sleep downstairs near her hospital bed so that I could watch her while she slept. And I did that for like 2.5 years straight. So my couch is all beat up and disgusting because I slept on it for 2 years watching her. But it's the same thing. But I have a question for you, Monica. You said that they diagnosed her with, what was it, Eurasia?
Aphasia. They originally diagnosed her with aphasia before they made the diagnosis of dementia. So aphasia is it affects your speech. Only reason some people kind of started to know about aphasia now is because that's Bruce Willis was diagnosed with aphasia.
Okay.
Aphasia affects speech. So sometimes it doesn't make in their mind so it's like their brain has it all set up of what they're going to say, but it ends up coming out either jumbled or not the way they intended. So it's so they don't make sense when they're talking.
Right.
Aphasia really affects it still happens in the brain, but it mostly affects speech.
Okay.
So in the beginning,
do they still think she has that?
They don't think so. As as months went on, and we she had a geriatric doctor, and the geriatric doctor is like, she doesn't have aphasia because her speech is starting to come back. And aphasia, when you have it, she like her speech. So although she did say, although it's not where it was, it's starting to kind of come back where we can understand what she's trying to say. And that was probably about 3 months afterwards when they made the final diagnosis of she has dementia.
Okay. I wasn't familiar with that, and I was just like, oh, that sounds like a fruit salad with whipped cream.
Yeah. It's a pretty sounding name, but yeah, more and more people are. I had never heard of aphasia when they first said aphasia. I'm like, what? And so that's how it was explained to me. Aphasia impacts speech.
Right. Okay.
But,
well, thank you.
But I mean, I could go on. It's interesting. Life with taking her to the doctor and taking her to get her hair done. I kind of like I laugh because the conversations we had, like, I'm driving her to the doctor's appointment, and I'll go pick her up. And she's like, "What are we doing today?" I'm like, "We're going to the doctor's appointment." She goes, "Oh yeah, it's on." She has a dry erase board, and I put everything so she can see it. And
that's good.
And I'll get her to the car, and we get in the car, and I close the door, and I get in, and she'll go, "No, what's going on today?" And we're going to the doctor, and that like the Kaiser, the drive from the facility to Kaiser is like maybe 5 minutes. And she'll ask me 20 times, like, "What are we doing?" And so, "Okay, Mom, we're going to the doctor." I know one time.
And it's important to just answer the question like she says it the first time.
And sometimes in my head, I do admit there's days like, "Oh, I told her 20 times we're going to the doctor." But she in her mind, she can't remember. But I remember it was one time she was at the doctor, and so they allowed me to go back with her. So. At that point in time, her walking was still relatively good. Right now, she definitely needs a walker. And the doctor had said, "Oh, follow us down this hall." So we were following a doctor, and the doctor, I don't know if you noticed at Kaiser on the wall, they have the foam,
hand
spot where the paper used to be.
Foam hand sanitizer. So the doctor had done that
sanitizer,
to put it in his hands. And this is another thing with I noticed with my mom and her with dementia, she saw the doctor do that, and so when she got to that thing, she wanted to press it, but she pressed it in a way where it went everywhere. Like the foam just went everywhere, and I'm like, why did you do that? And she looked at me like, and the foam was in her hair, on her hands, and she's kind of looking at me like,
oh.
And she kind of looked at me like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, it's okay, Mom. So I was picking her up, and the doctor turned around and was like, no, that was my fault. I'm like, no. I said, don't worry about it. And the doctor's like, we'll clean it up. So that had happened. And then there was another time I took her to get her hair done, and my mom's hair is gray. And we're driving, same thing. What are we doing? You're going to get your hair done. Okay, what are we doing? And I'm like, you're going to get your hair done. And at one point she's like, they're not going to dye my hair. I'm like, no, unless you ask them to dye your hair. No, they're not going to dye your hair. She's like, okay. So get her to the shop. We walk in, and as she must have said at the top of her lungs, like, I don't want my hair dyed. And I'm like, Mom, no, that's not what happened. And thankfully, like the woman who was doing her hair and another woman that was a stylist in the shop, both had family members with dementia, and they both at one point came to me like, "Does your mom have dementia?" I was like, "Yeah, like so does my mom." And so we, they were really kind and sweet. So every time I take her there, they're all really, really, really kind. But it's. I know I feel like I've taken up so much time. You probably want to talk about other.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting. And for me, because you're still in the middle of it, and I've gone through it. It's nice to hear, the struggles and how much you love your mom, because you often don't hear that. When you're at where I am, you don't get to hear the struggles and how much the love was there, and I love to hear about your mom. I love to hear about your mom because it fills my heart with all my memories of my mom.
Oh. There's, it's, and the world is different. So I don't know if you guys remember earlier in the story, that New Year's we were the family. So myself, my mom, my brother, and his family. My sister couldn't go. We were going to go to Hawaii, so we canceled the trip. And fast forward a couple of months, I must have mentioned it to the doctor because when I took her in for a checkup, the doctor's like, "Oh, are you guys still going to Hawaii?" And stupidly, I thought, well, with mom's diagnosis, I don't think we can go. And the doctor was like, "Well, why?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And he's like, "I think the trip would be good for her." And so we went ahead and planned the trip. And it just turned out my brother and his family flew on a different flight than my mom and I. And so it was I didn't know what the experience was going to be like with, bringing her to the airport and getting her on the plane. One thing I can say is United Airlines came through. They were great. People don't know when you book your flight, if you have a loved one that needs assistance or a wheelchair, you can indicate that when you're booking the flight. And so, I remember that, that morning, I drove to the airport, pulled up, I got her, they came to the car, put her in a wheelchair, got her in, and they're like, "Hey, you go park your car. We have your mom. We have the suitcases. We'll be here." They were great. Got us checked in, got us on the flight. The one thing I did on this flight, I did splurge because I went back and forth in my mind. I'm like, how is the seating going to work? Because it's 3 seats. Does my mom sit on the outside? Do I explain to the person in the third seat that, mom has dementia and it's going to be a struggle? And so I went back and forth and I splurged finally and said, you know what? Let me just buy first class. Because it'll be just the two of us, and we don't have to worry about walking over each other. So I did that, not knowing the day of the flight. When we went to get in, if you're familiar with United, they have something called Polaris class, where everybody, it's like your own little kind of pod. So there's nobody next to you. It's like if you're by the window, it's just you and all this extra space, and you can recline. So I'm like, this is great.
Oh, okay.
We get on the plane. I get my mom situated. I went and talked to the head flight attendant of our section and say, "Hey, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but my mom has dementia. She should be fine. She doesn't have outbursts, but in case her behavior seems odd, this is why. And here are a bunch of Starbucks gift cards for the inconvenience." And the guy was like, "You don't have to do that. That's fine." And she was great on the flight. She kept complaining why there was not a seat next to her. She's like, "What happened?" She kept asking me, "What happened to the seat next to me?" I'm like, "No, this is for you. You can lay down if you want. You can sit up."
Mhm.
And the flight attendants came through. They were like, "Miss Wilson, what do you want to eat?" And I think she didn't like what was on the menu, like, "Oh, we have these little box." Like they were they went above and beyond. I remember writing a really nice thank you letter
Aw.
to United. And so same thing on the other end. They were like, they came to us, they're like, "Hey, let everybody get off the plane. There, there's somebody's going to come and assist you guys to get off the plane." The wheelchair was there. They got us
Mm.
a ride that took us to the airport, or took us to, I'm sorry, to the hotel. And they were
Mhm.
fantastic. And
Mhm.
we just had to make sure, whatever we did, we ended up like renting a wheelchair. So whatever we did, that we had to make sure it accommodated my mom. So,
Aw.
we couldn't go, "Let's go rock climbing." Well, mom can't do that. And I think the one day we did go out, we had somebody, we were able to hire somebody to come in and be with her for that day. And she was just kind of like, she kept saying, "Some man came in and kidnapped me." But it was great. And the cool thing, on the flight on the way back, did the same thing in reverse. We ended up having that same Polaris class. And
Mhm.
I think probably about an hour into the flight, one of the flight attendants came to me and said, um, "Hi, I know you're Miss Wilson's daughter." She goes, "But I want to tell you, your mom was my kindergarten teacher."
Oh.
"What?" "She was my kid." I was like, and she was like, "I haven't seen her in so long. She was the best teacher ever." And she was, "I asked if they can move me here so I can help take care of this." And
Oh, that's the universe.
it was great that happened. But and we made it through that trip. Did we have some ups and downs? Yeah,
Yeah.
we did on that trip, but it was a learning experience. I mean, I felt bad that we were quick to go, "Okay, well, she has dementia, she can't go anywhere." And the doctor was like, "No, she can travel. She can, she can do that. You just, there's just different things that you should do to prepare yourself and
Mm.
make sure she's comfortable." And we had a fun trip. So I know I'm just telling you a few little stories here.
No, that's beautiful. And
But
I love that it was United. My dad has in it, he's a badass flight technician, mechanic for United Airlines. So I'll let him know.
tell them that United's number one in my book. They
United was super good to us when we went to Alaska too, because my dad wasn't mobile, and they had an
Mm.
oversized wheelchair for him because my dad is ginormous.
uh,
He's like
Aw.
close to 300 pounds, 6'5", and high maintenance. And they took good care of him. And then we went on Canada Air after that, and they were very good with him too. And they even gave me a glass of wine for my efforts.
oh,
Love,
I was
love.
offered a mimosa, so I was like, "I'll gladly take that mimosa."
I love that. Well, we have about 10, a little over 10 minutes left, and this has been a great conversation. Nicole has been fighting a good fight for a senior community because not every senior has loving children like yourselves that even if they in the moment, like I'm a spiritual person and I firmly believe that after, like, they know, or even during, they know that you're with them, and they'll that's something to, I guess, something to be grateful for. I'm thankful for my parents. I hope to be there for my parents, but there are parents out there that don't have those kids,
Yeah.
or don't have someone to look out for them, or don't have an advocate. And so what we do here is we advocate, and Miss Nicole has found a community where there's some, I guess, not good living conditions, or she could tell us about it and what that's like for that senior citizen community.
Yeah, Sienna Senior Housing here in Pittsburgh
Mm.
is not up to standard. They don't have wheelchair access from the railroad side at all. There's two separate buildings They're all 1 story and above, so nothing's on the ground. So you're in a wheelchair, so you have to get in an elevator to get to your apartment. So they had a fire not too long ago. How are they all supposed to get out? Who's going to clear the building? Who's going to make sure they're all out? Like, what are you supposed to do? People are in wheelchairs. People have, ambulatory chairs, walkers. They're on oxygen. All these different things are going on. So literally, it's like, where are we supposed to go when we go out? Where's the meeting place? Like nothing was in place. There's no plan of action of this is where you go. This is where we meet. There's no one here to help you come down. The elevators, sometimes, unfortunately, people have been stuck in the elevators for up to 2 hours. Right. And it's like, and how are you even, now, mind you, this is just on a normal day. So if there's a fire, how are you going to get in an elevator that doesn't work properly on a normal day? So we brought all this, of course, obviously to city council, and they've, done what they need to do so far. The city has sent out housing and all that good stuff. And we're just waiting to have a meeting to see, because it's Dumas Management is who owns it, what they're going to do about this, because it is unacceptable. There's other things, but like these are the big things that just happened recently. Also, that's just not acceptable, because anything
That's so
those
scary.
right? So yeah, not okay.
Not okay at all. Oh man.
No. So they've been organizing community meetings. So I go to the meetings with them, and then I'm encouraging them to come to city. I'm like, come to city council. Let them know what's happening, because they don't know. You need to come speak out, because if you don't, then nothing's ever going to change. Like, we're going to be there, but you can come too. I'm going to speak for you regardless, but you need to come too. So some of them do come and speak out at city council, which is good.
Thank you for advocating for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
No worries.
Is Adult Protective Services or anything like that involved as well?
I'm pretty sure they are. But see, that's the thing. The management, the people that work there that are supposed to be there helping them, don't really kind of do what they're supposed to, because there are advocates and people who come who's supposed to help them, but they kind of give them a hard time too. So it's just a whole rigmarole of problems that have to be worked out. So
You let me know if you need somebody to come and kick their ass, because I'm happy to.
We do not condone violence.
Violence.
People, I love them.
I know. We love that.
I love them.
Oh.
yeah.
A lot of
we're crying again, guys.
a lot of
It's okay to cry.
Adult care facilities, a lot of understaffed, have high turnover. And that's one thing that concerns the turnover, because I know since my mom's been where she is, that you see a turnover of staff, and then it just confuses them even more. Like
It does.
You have to be a really special kind of person to work with elderly people. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't get that.
Right.
Like I think because of the the special nature that is in this particular frame of videos right now, every single one of the people that are here are big-hearted people. I mean, we're advocates, we're city council, we're on the radio saying the right things, we're protesters, we're marchers, we're those people. Not everybody's like us, and unfortunately I think it's the people like us that need to be the ones that are caring for the elderly, and the veterans, and I think we're going to end up seeing less and less of that with this new administration, unfortunately. But I'm hoping to be a social worker one day and go help these people and pull it together and finish my education.
Yeah.
But right now,
we're gonna
just
keep
a volunteer.
we're gonna keep advocating and hopefully inspiring people out there that to help find their voices Oh, Nicole. Yes, 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 yes. Our community's better because of people like you all. And hopefully, there's a next generation of folks that can, I mean, there was generations before us that fought for many rights. And here we are. Miss Margie Carell, she's a hell of a fighter. She's elderly. She just lost her mom this morning. So prayers and love to Miss Margie. Yeah, she was one of the victims of one of our notorious bullies in our community.
Say it. Don't.
Nicole
Say it.
Sedano
Thank you.
bullied
Thank you.
bullied the hell out of this elderly woman, and no one was there to protect Margie Carell. Not the police, not the elderly folks that are supposed to, the advocates, no one. But she is a fighter,
She's
and
so happy she found you, Patty. And she's reached out to me so many times when I felt sad and just talked to me about her mom and her process.
Yeah.
She's the sweetest little thing.
She sure is. She's a fighter. She has a voice, and she said that her mom passed peacefully this morning. So if you all get around,
Prayers
send
for
her
her.
some love. Yeah, prayers for her and her family, and prayers for I know you, Frank, too. You'll be taking care of your loved one soon and traveling. But yeah,
Maybe offline you can give me her contact information so I can call her, because I know that when my mom and dad passed away that people were bringing me food and feeding my family, and that took off a lot of the pressure and let me have a moment to reconnect and grieve and feel my feelings.
Yeah.
I mean,
But for now,
I know she has Jim, and Jim is fantastic also.
He is.
But he's probably grieving too.
Yeah, indeed. But we're gonna just keep living and enjoying every moment with our loved ones while they're here. And I'm going to make a promise to be kinder and more patient to my parents, because I can be a bitch. I'm sorry. But I'm working on it, okay?
Sometimes it's really hard not to be. I have a lot of guilt still with the amount of fighting that I had with my dad, and people just keep reminding me, well, you had to fight for him because he treated you so poorly.
Oh. Well, can I say something before we,
Yes.
I have to give a word of advice, people that are out there whose parents are aging, have a conversation like, hey, let's have this tough conversation of, what accounts do you have out there? Is there a trust set up? What do you want to do if, you can't take care of yourself? Thankfully my parents set something up, but that wasn't fully communicated with my siblings. We knew some things were there. We didn't know, like, the great thing that happened, my mom had paid into this retirement account that pretty much pays a good chunk of where she lives. And it was great that she just happened to kind of come across it. Both my parents apparently love diversification because they had accounts everywhere. We think it's because, my dad, who was older than my mom, grew up during the Great Depression. And so we think that was the mentality of, we don't, put everything in place. But definitely, I think people, I think people should sit down with their parents who are aging and have that conversation. Like, what do you want to do if you can't take care of yourself? What do you want to do? Where do you want to be buried when you pass away? Where do you want your things to go, or where do you want, how do you want things? And I'm not saying we didn't have those conversations with my parents. I think we started to have them a little late. I wish we had started a little bit earlier. I mean, thankfully, a lot of stuff was in place. And, through the grace of God, a lot of stuff was in place. But so when people talk to me, I try to say, sit down with your parents. I tell my cousins, like, talk to your mom, and maybe it's time for you to go to doctor's appointments with your mom.
Right.
Mhm.
Know what's going, communicate with the doctor, know what's going on with the doctor, know what's going on with their bank account. Put your name, it was stroke of genius that we put all of our names on different accounts, me and my siblings on different accounts, bank accounts, because had we not done that, somebody would have gotten $20,000 in cash from my mom.
That part.
Yeah, it's really one thing my mom is real good about that. She's always talked about all those things, and she's big on, oh, let's talk about this. And one day I'm not gonna be here. And I'm like, yeah, I know, and I don't want to talk about it. Well, you're a big girl, we can talk about it. And I'm like, I understand. Hey, write it down.
And
I'm gonna
right with you,
cry.
Nicole. I didn't want to talk about it.
Okay, write it. You can also write it down and tell me where it is, and I can
Right?
write it all down. How about that? Because we don't need to talk about this every 5 minutes. Right.
Aw.
But you need to have that hard. It's going to be a hard conversation, but you'll be thanking yourself down the line, like, oh, I'm so glad we had that conversation. I'm sorry, Miss Patty, I totally went over on your time.
You're fine.
No, we
Yeah,
go over
you're fine.
sometimes. It's okay.
But we are gonna close it. I have to say hi to Bradley because we didn't get to say hi, Bradley. Hi, Bradley. He asked how everyone is. We're all good. Thank you for tuning in. And I have to do my spiel for my Carlos. So 8:00 every Wednesday. Please like and subscribe. And thank you very much for joining us. And good night from all. Thank you so much, Monica, for being a guest. And Mary, so nice to see Frank popping in. Prayers for your family and our baby Gavin. And of course, my baby Patty. And
Thank you all.
yeah, it's been a great show. And I'll see if Carlos is ready to finish up here and take us out.
Thank you for having me.
So
Thank you
get
for
it.
finding